Hey everybody. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I don't know what happened to everybody else. There were a few people here. I think they're still upstairs. But we're going to keep ourselves on track here and keep it going. So today I'm going to talk about the future of search. And hopefully this is a workshop in the sense that I'm going to ask you guys some questions. And there are going to be certain points where I need you guys to respond because I'm going to need some help in terms of figuring out where you guys are. But we're going to talk about Cortana, the future of search. And one of the things my colleague mentioned earlier talked about was this idea of being intelligently on. And so what I want to do is paint a picture of what it means to be intelligently on and describe why the future of search really depends on a search engine and being in particular being able to be intelligently on while adding in a sprinkle of serendipity. And so we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Now normally when I talk to people and they see that my title is an evangelist, this is usually what they think of. I promise there's not going to be any hellfire and brimstone. I'm not going to try to convert you to all being users today. Normally what my team and I do is we spend time talking to the folks at Microsoft Research. We talk to the product teams, to the engineering teams to really understand where they feel like the future of technology is going, what they're building in their products, and then try to translate to what that means for agencies and for marketers. So here's what we're going to talk about today. First, we're going to talk about the evolution of search. I think it's important before we can talk about kind of where we're going to understand where we're coming from. Then the second thing we'll do is we'll talk about what intelligently on means and how you actually build that into your DNA as a brand. And then finally, we'll introduce Cortana. So how many people have met Cortana already? One. Okay, so we'll meet Cortana. She's a very lovely person. Lots of fun. So let's talk a little bit about search in the past. Next question. How many people think search is sexy? Not one? Okay. Okay. So that's typically what happens when I ask this question. Nobody thinks search is sexy. And the reason they don't think search is sexy is because this is basically what search has been for the last eons of years. It's about library. You think librarians, you think about IBM and document retrieval, people, with little to no hair, glasses, stuck in a lab somewhere. A system to facilitate text-based information retrieval and URL matching. Not very sexy. I would argue that search can lead to a new enlightenment. I believe that search can actually be something that creates a more informed, more productive, just a happier society overall. And that's what we're going to figure out how that happens today. This actually isn't a novel idea that search can create a new enlightenment. There was a professor back in 1945. His name was Vannevar Bush. He was a professor at MIT. So he's in Cambridge, Massachusetts. He's in his lab, sitting at his desk. It's the summer, so it's probably hot. And he's really perplexed, and he's kind of, sad because he's seeing all around him all this great stuff that the scientists are doing. And he knows what they're doing it for. It's working up to the war, and he knows all these great people are basically thinking about how can we destroy people, how can we destroy countries, how can we protect ourselves. And it's really perplexing him and worrying him. And so his idea is that, we have to do something about this. So he comes up with an idea and he writes a paper. And the paper was called As We May Think. And in this paper, he basically calls for or comes up with the idea of what he called a collective memory machine. And the idea behind this collective memory machine, and this is the schematic that he included, was basically a machine that would house all of man's knowledge and information. And not only that, it would make all this information accessible. And by creating this machine and making all of man's knowledge and information accessible, there would be an information explosion that would lead to basically an explosion of happiness in society. This is what he wanted to have happen. He was a little bit ahead of his time. But as long as man can write or communicate, there has been some form of search. So back when we were only writing on caves, search basically took the form of pictures on a cave wall. Fast forward to 220 BC, there's a guy, his name is Callimachus. He works at the Library of Alexandria. Now he's not the chief librarian, but basically he's the guy that you need to go to if you need a book, right? So he's sitting there, he's getting bombarded with these questions day in and day out, people trying to find books in this huge, humongous library. And he's probably like, this has got to be a better way to do this. And so what he ends up doing is actually creating the first library catalog, 120 volumes of all of the books stored in the library there. Fast forward to 75, you get the microprocessor. In 1984, anybody on the internet in 1984? No, because if you were, you would look like this, and no one wants to admit that they look like this. We picked 1984 because in 1983 is when the domain naming system became the standard, and TCP/IP became the protocol that was used But if you were on the internet in 1984, you looked like this, and basically what you were doing was trying to find documents on a network. There were all these, research laboratories and places around the world that had all this information. It was text, and so you were trying to basically find out where this text lived. Fast forward to this 97 when this idea of portals came in, and basically like, hey, you could actually put a link on a page and tell people where to go. Yeah. Then in 1999, GoTo filed a patent for pay-per-click search act because someone realizes that basically, hey, we can make money off of this. And basically, search has been the same for the last 15 years. It's about finding information on stored documents on, stored servers somewhere that are basically heavy text-based. And so what you end up is an internet made up of nouns and words. And it's basically hyperlinks and links trying to connect those links to documents or words based on queries that people enter. We believe, though, that in this system, the reason it hasn't changed is because there's been just a focus on efficiency. Because if it's just nouns and words, it's all about how much can I index, and how fast can I go, and how much speed can I. I posit that today we're only looking at the tip of the iceberg. All those links and all those documents are kind of the only thing that we see, and beneath the surface, all the things that could possibly lead to alignment are there, but they're just under the water. And it's figuring out how do we get access to those and how do we turn them into things that can be actionable for people. So search in the future is going to be an intelligent fabric, really a connective tissue. It understands people, it understands users, it understands what they're trying to get done, and then it helps them get things done. It anticipates what they need, and how it allows them to do that at exactly the right time. So how does that happen and how does that work? Well, in order to make that happen, a search engine has to be intelligently on. What if technology disappeared? Or it just seemed like it disappeared? What if technology understood context, it understood mood, it knew when to show up and when to kind of go to the back? What if brands and marketers knew when to bombard you with messages or when to basically get the hell out of the way? What we're finding basically is that quiet is the new loud. And increasingly, all of us in society kind of have this ADD related to technology, or we're kind of ADD or technology bipolar. Like, think about how many usernames and passwords you have. You probably have 7 to 10 different usernames and passwords you have to memorize. You probably have 5 to 7 different devices on you. So, we're all being bombarded by messages and content and streams of information, social media, and so at some point we're just really wanting to turn off. What most of us really want to do is not turn off. We want to find balance. We want to have a relationship with our technology that enables us rather than distracting us. And so that's what being intelligently on can do. But in order to do that, as a brand or as a search engine, you have to really understand and be able to do 4 things. You have to understand entities. You have to understand context. You have to understand who your target, your consumer or user is. And then you actually have to enable them to complete actions. So let's go into actually each of these. So what do I mean by an entity? An entity basically is a person, place, or thing. This building is an entity, these chairs are entities, everything in the world around us is an entity. Take a table, for example. What we do basically today to represent entities, especially on the internet, is we use words. And words are a very low resolution description. So I can look at this chair here, I can know when it was made, I can know what the dimensions of it are, I can know how many people have touched it in the last 3 hours. But if I told you all those things and you read them on a piece of paper, you're still going to have a hard time understanding of what that table actually, or that chair actually looks like. What we're finding is because of the power of the internet and new technology, these digital traces of objects and entities are being left behind. And so what a search engine can start to do is start to stitch these images and these traces together to create more of a better and a bigger picture around what the world looks like. So take an example of a cat. We can have video of a cat. There are events related to cat, devices, services, payments, all kinds of things, where if we start to look at those at a more granular level, we get a better image of what that cat actually looks like. But let's not talk about cats. Let's talk about something that we're all very passionate about. Bleach, of course. So here's another question for you guys. What is bleach? Anybody? Bleach? Bleach, what'd you say? It's a chemical. Any other answers?
Japanese cartoon.
Japanese cartoon. There's always a spoiler in the audience. All right, so when we were first launching our search product, we went to a major consumer products goods company with a bleach product, and they said, you know what, we want to own the keyword bleach. Anytime someone searches on bleach, we want to dominate that keyword, we want to own it, we want people to think of our brand. So we're like, done, we can do that, write a check. So we started running their campaign, and then we showed them some reports showing the demographic information around who was searching on the keyword bleach. And we showed this to them, and they were like, no, this cannot be true. Something's wrong with your data, something's wrong with your system. Almost half of the people who are searching on the keyword bleach are males between 18 to 35. Because they were looking for this guy, right? So this is bleach. The stuff that they were selling was also bleach. So as in the search engine, I have to understand, are you talking about this guy or are you talking about the chemical? And it's not such a hard thing to do because this all has to happen within millions of seconds. So not only do we have to understand entities, but we have to understand that entities have relationships to each other. So here are three entities. One is Tom. What's the second one? Cruise, okay. And then the third is Unicorn, okay. So what does Tom, Cruise, and Unicorn have to do with each other? No, Tom Cruise does not have a unicorn. You might. Actually, he probably does. Any movie buffs out there? Well, this is what Tom Cruise and Unicorn have to do with each other. You can't hear the sound of the, oh, here it is.
Always go now, because I'll only be here for a short while. Do you trust me? I trust you, Leah. Nothing is more magical. As long as they roam the earth, evil can never harm your pure heart.
So I don't know how that didn't get an Oscar. Probably one of the finest pieces of acting ever. But so Tom Cruise and Unicorn. So as a search engine within hundreds of a second, I have to understand that Tom and Cruise, okay, those two things by themselves. Well, probably Cruise is a ship, but Tom and Cruise, that's a person. Oh, not only is that a person, that's an actor. And actors are pretty famous, important people. And related to Unicorn, that probably is a movie. And I have to understand that as a movie, what are the things that people want to know about movies? They want to understand who's in them. They want to understand what the rating is. They want to understand who the other actors are. And I have to be able to serve that up to a user and hopefully meet their intent and understand what their needs are. And again, this has to happen at scale automatically within hundreds of seconds. So it's not a very easy problem to do. One of the things that we've also realized is that brands are entities as well, and if we want to provide the most authoritative information on an entity, sometimes it's better for us to work directly with that brand. So Disney is an entity, the movie Frozen is an entity, Elsa is an entity, and so we have to figure out ways, well, how do we work with brands and marketers to get this content and this information as well? So Bing is putting together this huge corpus of entity information, and that's the first step to us being intelligently on. But it's not enough for us just to understand entities. We have to understand entities within the context and their environment. We have to understand what they mean in relation to the world that they're actually in. Nothing exists exactly in a vacuum, right? We're all in a place, there's things happening around us. And so we have to be able to make sense of what that context is. Our ability to do this is really being driven by this idea of the Internet of Things, which people have talked about earlier today, right? This idea that all the devices and things around us will have computers, they'll all be connected, they'll all have screens. The interesting thing, and the reason that's important to search and for brands as well, is that they're all going to have sensors, right? They're all going to have accelerometers and GPS signals, they'll have cameras and microphones. And what those sensors allow us to do is to collect more information about the context of the world, and then use that contextual information to either improve the experience or make the product or service better. So I want to show a few examples of what this looks like today. This just came out, I saw something on Kickstarter. This is a brand called Vessel. Basically, you put a drink in the cup and it knows whether or not you're drinking coffee or Diet Coke. This is an Aston Martin bike. It has a big computer right in between the handlebars that can measure things like leg speed and acceleration and altitude. It's $10,000 if you want one. This is a Beam toothbrush. It knows when you put it in your mouth, so it'll start basically timing and understanding how long you're brushing your teeth for. Our dogs' collars will have sensors that allow us to know where they are, how much exercise they're getting, so we can feel guilty about being a pet owner. Our trash cans will have sensors to let us know how big they are. Our thermostats will know when we are at home, when we're not. Vending machines will know how hot it is outside and whether or not I should charge you 25% more for this, for this soft drink. It'll know whether or not there's a lady or a man standing in front of it, and whether I should send you, give you this particular sample or a different one. This is a breastfeeding tissue bra. There's actually sensors in the bra that measure changes in temperature that are associated with cell growth, and this bra has been demonstrated to actually improve identification of cancer developing much better than any other technology that we have today. Our cars will look at our faces and read our moods. They'll know, whether or not we're happy, whether we're sad. They'll measure our heart rate, whether or not we're perspiring, whether or not we're falling asleep or arguing with our spouse. Our contacts will know, what our glucose levels are. Our onesies will know whether or not our baby is moving around a lot or how, what their temperature is. This is a product in Microsoft Research called Septibu, which has sensors in the earbud to understand, again, other biorhythms, our heart rate. If you're feeling in a bad mood, maybe Kenny G comes on, helps you feel a little bit better. Our devices know our location, and they try to serve us information based on that. Here's a search example related to that, where normally what used to happen if you did a search with your mobile devices, you would get a certain, or a set of results within a certain radius around you. Now, if you have a device, we actually know, and it was funny, we were talking to someone from Allstate Insurance, and one of the things that they're trying to do is put sensors in cars, and people are afraid because they know, people are like, oh, well, you'll know if I'm speeding or not. Well, the case is we actually already know if you're speeding. We know if you're walking, we know if you're on a bike, probably, we know if you're speeding, or if you're in a car. And so one of the things that we realize is if we also look at the data in terms of where you've been and where you're going, we can give you much better search results. So if we know you're in a car, and you do a search for, say, pizza, why would I show you pizza restaurants that are 2 miles behind you in an exit that you can't get to? So with trajectory search, we can actually create search results based on the path that you're going and based on how fast you're going. So we're collecting all this data to help us understand context. This engineer was telling me if you basically stitch together all the pixels of map data that we have for the Western Europe and all the United States, you can go around the world pixel by pixel 1,000 times. So lots of that is big data, I think, actually, maybe just a little bit. So you have to understand entities, you have to understand the context that they're in, and then you actually have to understand how users are interacting with these entities in that context. So you have to actually be able to identify someone, and not necessarily what they're saying who they are, you have to be able to recognize them. We have to be able to understand where you're located, how much you like to spend on things. We have to understand what you're interested in, whether you like sushi, whether you like barbecue, whether you like to get up early, where you work, what your intents are. From a social perspective, we have to understand how you're connected in your social network, whether that be where you live or where you work. And more importantly, we have to understand who are the people that are close to you, so who are your friends, who are your family members, and what do those connections and relationships look like. And then from an intent perspective, sometimes we can tell this by actually looking at the device that you're using. So one of the things that we can do from a search perspective and that we look at is called this thing called a query chain. And basically a query chain is how long does it take you from when you basically first type in your query to when you basically are done. Like you search something and then you're done. And what we find is that on a desktop or PC, on average, most queries take about a month to complete, right? So you go on, you do some stuff, you go back later. These are some pretty big queries. It usually takes about a month. On your mobile device, it takes about an hour. So this lets us know that mobile queries are much more action-oriented. People are trying to actually do something quickly, and there's a commercial intent often there. So you say, aha, mobile queries are intent-based. So if I'm on a mobile device, I should make everything about action. Well, maybe, because we also look at queries, and this is an example of someone's query log that we looked at. This is Houston, Texas. And on day one, they're in a residential neighborhood, and they do a search for, this is all on their mobile device, they do a search for headache relief, Tylenol, pharmacy. Typically, searches that we would think are more kind of informationally based, so things that they would normally do on their laptop. On day two, they do a search on their mobile device, and they do a search for Walgreens, Walgreens.com, and Walgreens directions. Now, both on their mobile device, on day one, they were too sick or too tired to go down and get to their PC, so they were doing informational searches. On two, their mobile searches were mobile. So mobile searches are mobile except when they're not. I don't know. But you have to understand the intent. Then once you've understood the intent, you have to help people basically get things done. You have to actually help them complete actions and complete tasks. So back to our library example. Anyone been to the library recently? No, one, couple, yeah. Were you actually looking for books, or you're like using the internet? No. You're looking for books? So I don't know about your experience, but when I went to the library, you would basically go to the librarian and say, hey, I need to write a paper on kangaroo rats, right? So you're like, okay, go to the card catalog. So you go to the card catalog, much like this lady is, and you would basically be flipping through them, and then you would get a piece of paper and you write down all the places where you would have to go to get to the books on kangaroo rats. But this is kind of like the searches today, and you go to a search engine, you type in a query, and then it spits out a bunch of places that have links to other places that you could go that might have information on the thing that you were looking for. But then you don't just like close your computer because you're done. You actually need to find something to get things done. And so when we surveyed users, they said, hey, I don't just come to you guys because I like searching in search engines. I'm actually trying to get things done. There are tasks that I want to complete. And there were basically 3 tasks that they said that they wanted to get complete broadly. I think the informational, kind of navigational, that's a good framework. This is the framework that we came up with. So one is they said, hey, I'm kind of going on an exploration. So I don't really have a specific destination in mind. I'm kind of killing time. I might be looking at the latest fashions, or maybe I'm looking at some news articles, and 10 minutes later, for some reason, I'm looking at Kim Kardashian's wedding pictures. These are explorations. You're kind of open to serendipity, kind of just getting lost and finding new ways of doing things. Then people said, you know what, sometimes I'm on a mission. I need to know when is the next train. I need to know who is the author of this book. I need to know what the generic name of a drug is. So I'm optimizing here for speed and efficiency. I need to get out, get done. Don't interrupt me. Don't provide you with a lot of extra stuff. And then sometimes I'm on an excavation. Like I just have this really gnarly problem that I need to solve, and I'm going to need to search. But I'm probably going to need to do some other searches because I'm going to talk with my friends and family. I'm going to look at different information. I could be planning my next trip. I could be thinking about whether or not I'm going to go to graduate school. Maybe I'm looking up treatments for specific conditions. So we're all trying to get things done. And so to be intelligently on means not just being at the right place at the right time. It means actually improving that experience for that user and actually helping to do something that they're trying to do. And increasingly what we're seeing is that our consumers want us to do this on their behalf. Or we're going to try to do it on their behalf because we know that that's kind of what they want. So you have Google trying to create these self-driving cars. Siri is there. And then we have
I appreciate your attraction to my intelligence, but keep in mind, it's artificial.
So this is Cortana. Anyone with a Windows phone will meet her soon. She's our artificial intelligent virtual assistant. Is there any gamers out here? No gamers? A couple. So if you play Halo, then you'll recognize her from Halo in that game. But she is Bing's and soon to be Microsoft's virtual assistant. And so Cortana can be the face of Bing, and is really what is enabling search to be intelligently on within Microsoft's products and services. And so what I talk a little bit about is, what does this actually mean to be intelligently on, and how does she demonstrate these properties, and then what can brands do to do the same thing? So the first thing that she does is she actually introduces herself, and she starts to learn a little bit about you. And so before you've even done anything, she'll look at where you're located, she'll look at the device you're on, she'll start to show you local weather or local news based on the things that she already knows about you. Then there's 3 things that she does to be intelligently on, and these are things that I want you to keep in the back of your mind, because you have to think about, well, what does this mean for my company or my brand or the brand that I'm working on behalf of? The first thing is that she makes every interaction necessary. So she uses her capabilities to learn more about you as a consumer, about as a user, and then she uses that data and that information to create experiences that feel bespoke, where they feel custom, and they feel very much personalized, so that only the time she's interacting with you is who you really want her to. So how does she do this? First, she'll actually ask you some specific questions about yourself, so she's very proactive. She'll say, what kind of restaurants do you like? What kind of news are you interested in? She'll spend some time, she'll get to know some of that stuff. And then she'll start showing you things. So based on what you've actually input or provided to her, she'll start showing you music events or news related to the things that you'd like. Again, she'll show you local weather based on where you are or places that you're going. She'll show you global headlines based on things that you've done before. And she's always learning about you. She'll know where you go to work. She'll know where home is. And then she'll start to ask you, she's like, is this where you work? If so, let me know, because I can make your route getting to work better. Is this where your home is? She's always trying to find this information about you. And then she does it in a funny way. She'll ask you, really cute questions. And then she stores all this information in a notebook. All the things that she knows about you, you can control. You can go in and say, hey, you know what, I actually don't like sushi anymore. I got sick. I'm really into paleo food, right? But not only is she looking for your explicit things to tell her about what you like, but she's also learning. So she's looking at what you search on. She's looking at the locations that you go. She's looking at the things that are in your email. You've all provided, say, yes, I signed up for this, use this data. She's looking at who you contact with most frequently. And so she's building all this information about you, again, to provide you better, more informed, more personalized experiences. So the second thing that she does is she knows when to be present. And what that basically means is she knows the important moments in life that she can help with, And when those moments are there, she tries to extend her hand and say, hey, here's how I can help. And then she gets out of the way. So from a brand perspective, it's knowing, hey, if I'm selling diapers, what are those moments that I need to be most present in someone's life? Well, maybe it's around someone having a baby. So how do I show up in a very relevant way that actually enhances that experience? So this is how she does it. She uses planners. So there are a couple of different planners that she uses. The first one is a daily planner. So this is hard to see, but basically she starts providing information based on the time of day. So in the morning, when this user wakes up, she's telling her how long it's going to get to work because of traffic. She's giving her the weather. She's giving her some news updates, things that she likes to read in the morning. At midday, when she's leaving work, she's telling her about restaurants that have carry-out. She's telling her about movies that are playing nearby. And then later on in the evening, she's telling her about the next day. She's telling her about what the weather is going to be like on the following day. She's telling her information about her schedule, that she might have a conflict in meetings. The travel planner looks at things that she's doing from a travel-related perspective. So it'll tell her where the airport is. It'll tell her how fast she has to leave to get there. It'll have her boarding pass information. If she's traveling to a foreign land, it'll have currency information. And all this is provided without her actually having to say anything or to say, hey, tell me what the local currency in Brazil is like right now. She'll also help with scheduling. So if you're having a meeting with someone, or say you're IMing someone back and forth, she'll actually hear that says, oh, you said you wanted to have a meeting with Bob tomorrow. Would you like me to schedule a meeting for that? Would you like me to schedule a reminder? So she'll help you get things. She knows who Bob is because Bob is in your contacts. And so it makes it really easy to do that for you. And then finally, Cortana knows when to get out of the way because she understands that she doesn't want to be an ever-present thing in your life. So she does this by creating quiet hours. So these are basically times that you can set and say, hey, I don't want to be disturbed. Between these hours, I don't want to see any tweets. I don't want to see any IMs. I don't want to see any messages. I just really want to be able to be alone. But again, she knows that sometimes you do want to be bothered, particularly by the people who are most important to you. And so either because you've explicitly said, hey, this is my wife or this is my daughter, she'll say, hey, do you want these people in your inner circle? Or it'll learn. Or maybe you can set things that say, hey, if someone calls me 3 times, you know what? Maybe they should be able to get through because maybe it's an emergency. Or she learns that you talk with people a lot, and she'll suggest, hey, do you want to put this person in your inner circle? So what does this mean for marketers? So the first thing is to be intelligently on, to be able to come into a consumer's life, to have meaning, to be relevant, to add value to that experience, and then get out. You have to be able to do 4 things. You have to understand your brand as an entity, and what your brand's entity is in relationship to other entities that that consumer might be using. You have to understand the context that they're in, and knowing, why it's not a good idea for a guy to maybe speak about, suicide in that particular example. You have to understand who the consumer is and what their needs are, what they're trying to do, and then you actually have to enable them to get things done and enable them to complete actions. And then once you've done that, you can help reduce clutter and noise, know when to be present, again, knowing what your brand relates to most in their life and when are those moments that you're going to be most important. And then make every action necessary by understanding who they are as a consumer and how you can create a customized, more personalized experience. And I like this quote from William Gibson. So he's the guy that coined the term cyberspace. So a very kind of out there, hippie kind of guy. And he said the future is here, it's just not widely distributed yet. So what I want you to imagine is that you go back home, you're in New York, so you're probably you're making a little bit of money. This is your kitchen. So you go into your kitchen, you see there's a pineapple. You put the pineapple on the table. Guess what? The table's a computer. It has a screen. It has sensors, so it recognizes that this is a pineapple. It knows what season it is. It knows whose birthdays are coming up, so it starts to recommend things that you can do with the pineapple. Maybe you can make a pineapple upside down cake, or you can make pineapple cupcakes. So it actually serves up some recipes based on that. But guess what? It also knows that you have a gluten allergy, so it then gives you recipes that don't have any gluten in them. But guess what? Your computer is also of a table is also connected to your refrigerator. That's also a computer, and your refrigerator knows what you have in it, and it knows that you don't actually have enough eggs to make the recipe that you selected to make. So it tells you, it gives you a signal to say, hey, you need some eggs, go out and get some. Guess what? There's a Ralph's or a grocery store 2 blocks down that's having a sale on eggs. They can tell you, hey, if you come in now, buy eggs, you'll get, buy 12, get 1 dozen free. So you get a coupon. And in that whole experience, did you ever do a search? You didn't say, what can I make with pineapples? You didn't say, show me pineapple recipes without gluten. You didn't say, egg deals, or you didn't say, where's the nearest grocery store? All that information was served up to you. So search basically stepped into the background, but it was there when you needed it. It was seamless in all of your experiences And that's what search should be like in the future. That's what our brand interactions should look like in the future. And hopefully if we're creating really good advertising and marketing, that's what that will look like in the future as well. And so again, it should be implicit, human, and helpful. Again, like this idea of a fabric, the connective tissue is there. You need it, but it's not always there in front of your face. And the most important thing is it helps you get things done at the right time. That's it. Thank you.